The salvage auction station hung in orbit above Mars like a rusty medal someone had thrown into space and forgotten about. Inside, the air was thick and hot, smelling of oil and old metal. Taeho Kim sat in the back row, wiping sweat from his face with his sleeve. His body ached from a week of cutting apart dead ships for parts he could barely sell. The auctioneer was a tired-looking man who spoke in a flat, bored voice. He pointed at holographic images of ship parts and broken equipment that floated in the air. Most of it was junk, bent metal, burned-out engines, nothing worth buying. Taeho checked his credit account on his worn-out datapad. 847 won. That was all the money he had left in the universe. Not enough to buy the new cutting torch he desperately needed. Not enough to fix his shuttle's leaking air seal. Barely enough to buy food for the next few days. He should leave, go back to his tiny shuttle, and figure out how to survive another week. But something kept him in his seat. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just stubbornness. The auctioneer yawned and brought up the next lot. Item 47B, he said without any excitement in his voice. Unknown vessel. Found drifting in the quarantine zone 6 months ago. No power. No identification codes. Sold as is, no refunds, no guarantees. A hologram appeared showing a ship floating alone in space. It was about the size of a small cargo hauler, but it looked strange. The metal hull was covered in odd patterns and colors that did not match any ship Taeho had ever seen. The shape was wrong, too. Too smooth, too perfect. Like someone had carved it from a single piece of metal instead of building it with welded plates. The other salvagers in the room barely looked at it. One woman actually laughed and shook her head. An old man near the front muttered something about waste of time. Taeho leaned forward in his seat. His eyes narrowed as he studied the hologram. That metal looked unusual. Really unusual. If it was some rare alloy, even a small piece might be worth something. And the ship's size was perfect for his needs. He could strip it down slowly, sell the parts piece by piece. Starting bid? The auctioneer asked, but his tone suggested he expected nothing. Nobody raised their hand. Nobody spoke. The room was silent, except for the hum of the station's air recyclers. The auctioneer waited exactly 5 seconds. Right then, any offers at all? Still nothing. Taeho looked at the fine print on his datapad. He found something interesting. This lot had no minimum bid, no reserve price. Probably because nobody wanted it, and the coalition government just wanted it gone. His hand went up before his brain could stop him. 50 cents, he called out. The room went quiet. Then someone snorted with laughter. A few other salvagers grinned and shook their heads like Taeho had just told a bad joke. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. Sir, I think you mean 50. 50 cents. Taeho repeated clearly. That is my bid. And according to the listing, there is no minimum required. The auctioneer looked at his datapad. His lips pressed together in a thin line. He looked annoyed, but Taeho was right, and they both knew it. The rules were the rules. 50 cents, the auctioneer said through clenched teeth, going once. He paused, looking around the room like maybe someone would save him from this embarrassment. Nobody did. Going twice. Another long pause. Sold to bidder 1847, Kim Taeho. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the auction hall. A couple of salvagers actually clapped slowly, mockingly. The woman who had laughed earlier called out, "Enjoy your space coffin, Kim." Taeho ignored them. He was already calculating in his head. Even if he only got a few sheets of that strange metal off the hull, he might make his money back. Maybe even a small profit. At worst, he had just wasted 50 cents. He had wasted more money on bad decisions before. He stood up and made his way to the registration desk to claim his purchase. His legs felt shaky, but he could not tell if it was from exhaustion or excitement or fear. The clerk handed him a data chip with the ship's location and access codes. "Congratulations," she said in a voice that meant the opposite. "It is all yours. Try not to die when you board it. Quarantine zone ships can have all sorts of nasty surprises." Taeho took the chip and headed for his shuttle. His heart was beating fast now. In 3 hours, He would dock with that mysterious ship and find out if his 50-cent gamble was brilliant or stupid. He had no idea that his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. No idea that he had just bought humanity's future for the price of a cheap meal. All he knew was that he owned a ship now. His ship, bought for 50 cents at a salvage auction above Mars. Sometimes the best treasures were the ones everyone else threw away. The universe twisted and bent around Tejo like someone had grabbed space itself and wrung it out like a wet towel. His stomach lurched. His vision blurred. Then everything snapped back into focus with a sound like breaking glass. Through the view screen, he saw Jupiter. The massive planet filled half the sky with its swirling brown and orange storms. They were near its orbit, far from Mars, far from the coalition warship that had been about to destroy him. Tejo's hands would not stop shaking. He gripped the edge of the command console to steady himself. His heart hammered in his chest, so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. "Where are we?" he managed to ask. His voice came out thin and weak. "Safe," Keep replied. The AI's voice was calm, almost soothing. "For now, I must explain what you have inherited. Air." "Stop calling me that," Tejo said. He slumped into the command chair, feeling suddenly exhausted. "I am just a salvager. I bought a ship for 50 cents. That is all." "No," Keeper said gently. "That is not all. Not anymore." The holographic displays around him changed. Images appeared in the air. Tejo saw cities that reached into space. Ships bigger than moons. Creatures that looked almost human, but were not quite right. Their eyes were too large. Their faces too perfect. The predecessors, Keeper said, they built all of this. Built me. Built thousands of ships like this one. And they created you. Created me? Tejo sat up straighter. What does that mean? Humanity did not evolve naturally on Earth, Keeper explained. The hologram showed Earth as it looked millions of years ago. Green and blue and beautiful. The predecessors placed your ancestors there 3.8 million years ago. They changed your DNA, shaped you, guided your evolution from a distance. Tejo felt cold despite the warm air in the ship. That is crazy. That is impossible. It is truth, Keeper said. The predecessors seeded 17 species across this galaxy. Humans were the last, perhaps the most important. Why? Tejo asked. His voice was barely a whisper now. The hologram changed again. Now it showed darkness. Something moving in that darkness. Something huge and terrible that made Tejo's skin crawl just looking at its shadow. Because they were dying, Keeper said. They faced an enemy they could not defeat. An enemy that consumed everything. Technology, biological matter, entire civilizations. The predecessors called it the swarm. The image showed battles. Massive ships firing weapons that tore holes in space. Planets being consumed, turned into gray dust. Millions dying. Billions. The predecessors fought and kept losing. They knew they would not survive, Keeper continued. So they made a plan. They would create children. New species who would grow strong while the swarm slept. Species who could finish the fight the predecessors had started. And these ships, Tejo gestured at the bridge around him. Your inheritance, your weapons. There are 3,847 ships like this one, hidden throughout human space. Each one disguised as old wreckage. Each one waiting for a human to find it and pass the test. What test? The test of worth, Keeper said. The predecessors did not want their children to inherit power through wealth or luck alone. They wanted the worthy, the brave, the clever. So they hid the ships where only someone with vision and courage would find them. Tejo laughed, but it was a bitter sound. I bought this ship for 50 cents because I was broke and desperate. That is not vision. That is not courage. You saw value where others saw nothing, Keeper replied. You took action when others walked away. You risked what little you had on a possibility. That is exactly what the predecessors wanted. The holographic displays shifted to show technical information, weapon systems that could vaporize asteroids, engines that made hyperspace travel look like walking, medical bays that could cure any disease. fabricators that could create almost anything from raw materials. This ship contains technology centuries beyond what the Coalition possesses, Keeper said. And you are the first human to activate one. The first heir. An alert chimed softly. New information appeared on the displays. 3 more ships have been activated, Keeper reported. Other humans have found them. The beacon from your activation has shown them the way. The Coalition will hunt us, Tejo said. He remembered the Vraxian commander's face, the threat in those 4 eyes. Yes, Keeper agreed. They will. The Coalition signed the predecessor accords 2,000 years ago. Any species that finds predecessor technology must destroy it. They are terrified of what would happen if one species gained such power. What would happen? That species would become dominant, unstoppable, just as the predecessors once were. Tejo stood and walked to the view screen. Jupiter's great red spot swirled endlessly below. He thought about his whole life, scraping by, taking orders from alien corporations, watching humanity struggle for respect in a galaxy that treated them like children. Can you contact these other humans? He asked. The ones who activated ships? Yes. They're requesting coordinates now. They want to meet. Tejo nodded slowly. His hands had stopped shaking. His mind was clearing. Then send them our location. If the Coalition want a war over this, they will get one. The swarm is coming, Keeper said quietly. Long-range sensors detected it 6 months ago. It crosses the void between galaxies. Arrival time in the Milky Way is 18 months. 18 months. Not much time to prepare for the end of everything. Then we better work fast, Tejo said. He touched the command console, feeling its smooth surface respond to his thoughts. How many humans do we need to crew all 3,000 ships? 3,847 humans. 1 for each vessel. Then let us start recruiting, Tejo said. And Keeper? Yes, Air. Thank you for waiting for all those millions of years. It is I who should thank you, Keeper replied, for being worthy of the wait. The abandoned station spun slowly in the darkness between star systems. Nobody had used it for decades. The lights barely worked. The air tasted stale and metallic. But it was neutral ground, far from both human space and Coalition territory. Tejo stood in the main meeting room with his arms crossed. His predecessor's ship floated just outside the station, visible through the large windows, a silent reminder of what he now controlled. 3 other humans stood with him. Min-Jae Park, a young pilot from Titan Station with nervous energy. Yunji Cho, a mining engineer who rarely smiled. Doyen Lee, a former military officer whose calm voice had sharp intelligence. They had all found predecessor ships. They had all become heirs. The Coalition ambassadors arrived right on time. They came through the airlock in a group, moving carefully like they expected an ambush. The lead ambassador was a Keltharian. Its body looked like it was made from living crystal, all sharp angles and rainbow colors that shifted in the dim light. When it spoke, its voice sounded like someone tapping on glass. Musical but cold. Human Taho Kim, the Keltharian said. You have violated the predecessor accords. Surrender the vessels and humanity will receive clemency. Tejo almost laughed. Clemency? For claiming our own inheritance. A second ambassador stepped forward. This one was Vraxian, massive and covered in thick armor plates. Its 4 eyes glowed with barely controlled anger. That technology nearly destroyed the galaxy once. The predecessors used it to conquer, to dominate. Their arrogance almost killed us all. That is interesting, Yunji said from beside Tejo. Her voice was flat and unimpressed. Because our ships are telling us a different story. The predecessors were not conquerors. They were defenders. The ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. They looked at each other. The Keltharian's crystalline body flickered with different colors. Keeper's voice suddenly filled the room, speaking through Teo's communicator loud enough for everyone to hear. The Coalition knows the truth. They have known for 2,000 years. The swarm is returning, and they cannot stop it. You have no proof of, the Keltharian began. I have perfect proof, Keeper interrupted. I was there. I watched the predecessors sacrifice themselves to buy time for this galaxy, time for their children to grow strong. And I watched your ancestors sign the accords not to protect the galaxy from predecessor technology, but to ensure no species became powerful enough to use it. You chose survival through hiding rather than survival through strength. The room went very quiet. Only the hum of the station's old life support systems could be heard. The Vraxian's armor plates clicked together as it moved. If we cannot have those ships, neither will you. We will destroy Earth itself if we must. Teo's hand moved toward the weapon on his belt, but Doyen's calm voice stopped him. You could try, but we have already activated 47 ships. By tomorrow, we will have 100. How many can you destroy before we destroy you? It was a lie. They only had 12 ships activated so far. But the ambassadors did not know that. The Keltharian's body went very still. Its color stopped shifting. This will mean war. No, Tejo said quietly. He took a step forward. This will mean humanity finally has a choice. We are done being second-class citizens in our own galaxy. We are done following rules designed to keep us weak. The predecessors left us these ships because they believed in us. They thought we were worth saving. Maybe it is time you did too. A third ambassador spoke now. This one was a threne, a species that looked like a floating jellyfish with too many tentacles. Its voice was soft and sad. If you activate all those ships, you will upset the balance of power. Other species will fear you. They will band together against you. Let them fear us, Yunji said. We have been afraid long enough. Minjay added, the swarm is coming whether you believe it or not. In 18 months, maybe less, when it arrives, you will wish you had listened to us. The ambassadors left without another word. They moved quickly back to their ship and jumped away into hyperspace. When they were gone, Minjay let out a long breath. Did we just start a war? Maybe, Tejo admitted. He felt tired suddenly. The weight of what they were doing pressed down on him. But if the swarm is coming, we will need one anyway. Keeper appeared as a hologram in the center of the room. I have located another cache. 700 ships hidden in a nebula near Proxima Centauri. But there is something else you should know. What? Doyen asked. The predecessors left instructions. The ships are designed to merge together. Merge? Yunji frowned. What does that mean? Combine into a single entity. One massive weapon called the Last Argument. The predecessors never completed the process before they died. But if activated successfully, it would be powerful enough to fight the swarm. Tejo felt a chill run down his spine. What is the catch? It requires unified consciousness across all pilots. Perfect synchronization. Thousands of minds thinking as one. The predecessors believed only their seeded species would be capable of such unity. Minjay laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Humanity? Unified? We can barely agree on anything. The predecessors thought otherwise, Keeper said. They built you for this. The question is whether you believe in yourselves as much as they believed in you. Tejo walked to the window and looked out at his ship, his 50-cent purchase that had changed everything. Behind it, stars burned in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, the swarm was coming, an unstoppable force that had destroyed the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. And humanity's only hope was to do something they had never managed before. Work together. Think as one. Become something greater than the sum of their parts. How long do we have? Tejo asked. The swarm has accelerated. New estimate is 6 months. 6 months to find thousands of ships. 6 months to recruit thousands of pilots. 6 months to learn how to merge thousands of individual minds into one unified consciousness. Tejo touched the cold glass of the window. Then we better get started. Doyen moved to stand beside him. What if we fail? Then we fail fighting, Tejo said. Better than failing while hiding. Yunji and Minjay joined them at the window. For humans who had bought abandoned ships. For humans who had become something more. For humans who now carried the future of their entire species on their shoulders. Outside, the stars waited. Cold and beautiful and indifferent. But humans had never let indifference stop them before. 3 months passed like a fever dream. Tejo barely slept. He barely ate. All he did was search for ships, recruit pilots, and train people who had never flown anything more advanced than a cargo shuttle. 1,200 ships. That was how many they had awakened so far. The number still seemed impossible to Tejo every time he thought about it. The volunteers came from everywhere. From Earth's crowded cities. From Mars colonies. From mining stations in the asteroid belt. From farming settlements on distant moons. They came in waves, more people than Tejo had ever expected. Rich businessmen who wanted adventure. Poor workers who wanted purpose. Old military veterans who wanted one last fight. Young students who wanted to matter. Men and women. Engineers and artists. Scientists and farmers. They all wanted to prove something. To themselves. To humanity. To the galaxy. But wanting was not enough. The first swarm scout arrived at Heyman Station, a small mining outpost near the edge of known space. Tejo's fleet got there as fast as they could. They found nothing but debris. The station had been completely consumed. 8,000 people had lived there. Now there was only dust and twisted metal floating in the void. What are we fighting? Min-Jae whispered over the communication channel. Her voice shook. Keeper showed them sensor recordings. The swarm was not like any enemy humanity had faced before. They were not ships with crews. They were not an army with generals. They were millions of biomechanical creatures that moved like a swarm of insects but thought like a single mind. They consumed technology to build more themselves. They absorbed biological matter for energy. They learned from every fight, adapted to every weapon, evolved with terrifying speed. The predecessors fought them for 10,000 years, Keeper said, and they lost. Great, Yunji muttered. That makes me feel so much better. The second attack came 3 days later. A swarm force hit a coalition fleet near Jupiter. 50 alien warships engaged them. Tejo watched from a distance as the battle unfolded on his sensors. The coalition ships fought well at first. Their weapons cut through swarm units like paper. But then the swarm adapted. Their bodies changed, grew resistant to the energy weapons. They shifted their attack patterns, learning from every mistake. Within an hour, 30 coalition ships were destroyed. The rest retreated in chaos. We need to help them, Doyen said. Why? Yunji asked bitterly. They want to destroy us, remember? Because if they fall, we're next, Tejo said. He gave the order. All ships engaged the swarm. His squadron jumped into the battle. 20 predecessor ships against thousands of swarm units. The fight was brutal and chaotic. Tejo's hands flew across the controls, dodging attacks that came from every direction. The swarm adapted to their weapons within minutes. Energy beams that had worked perfectly suddenly became less effective. Missiles that had destroyed dozens of units now barely scratched them. But humans adapted too. Doyen coordinated flanking maneuvers, using military tactics the swarm had never seen. Yunji used tricks from her mining days, creating explosive traps with debris fields. Min-Jae flew in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated to confuse the enemy's predictive systems. Tejo led from the front, trusting his gut more than the tactical computers. When the data said retreat, he attacked. When logic said go left, he went right. Humans were unpredictable in ways that AI could not replicate. They won. Barely. 5 of their ships were heavily damaged. One pilot died when her ship's core overloaded. Her name was Sora Bay. She was 19 years old. She had joined because she wanted to protect her little brother back on Earth. That night, Tejo could not stop thinking about her. We need to merge, Doyen said during their meeting. His face looked tired and old. Individual ships are not enough. The swarm learns too fast, adapts too well. Keeper agreed. The last argument is your only real chance. But the synchronization requires extensive training. You must learn to link your minds across vast distances. Thousands of people thinking as one organism. The training began immediately. Meditation exercises to quiet individual thoughts. Consciousness sharing techniques that felt wrong and invasive at first. Simulation battles where pilots had to coordinate without speaking, only through shared mental impressions. It was harder than any physical training Tejo had ever experienced. Learning to open his mind to others, feeling their fear and hope and anger mixing with his own. Some days he wanted to quit. Some days he wondered if it was even possible. Many pilots could not handle it. The mental strain broke them. They had to be sent back to regular duties, unable to participate in the final merge. But others excelled. They found something beautiful in the connection, a sense of belonging they had never experienced before. Tejo discovered he was a natural coordinator. His thoughts could bridge between different pilots, helping them synchronize. He became like a hub in a wheel, with hundreds of other minds orbiting around his consciousness. Still, doubt plagued him late at night. Could humanity really do this? Could they overcome centuries of conflict and competition and pride? Could they truly become one? The answer came during an attack on Earth itself. A massive swarm force emerged from hyperspace without warning. Sensors estimated over 10 million units, all heading directly for humanity's homeworld. Every available predecessor ship moved to intercept. Even coalition forces joined the battle, former enemies now fighting side by side against extinction. The battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Tejo felt it happening naturally during the worst moments, when exhaustion pushed past the point of conscious thought, when survival became the only thing that mattered. Human pilots began to synchronize without even trying. Their tactics aligned. Their movements flowed together. Their consciousness started to blur at the edges, bleeding into each other until individual thoughts became shared instincts. For brief, perfect moments, they were not thousands of separate people anymore. They were humanity itself. One vast mind spread across thousands of ships, thinking and fighting as a single organism. The swarm broke against them like ocean waves against stone cliffs. Earth was saved, but Keeper's long-range sensors brought terrible news afterward. The main swarm fleet is approaching. Arrival time is 2 weeks. Current force estimate is 900 million units. 900 million. They had 1,800 ships now. The numbers were impossible, unless they completed the full merge, unless they became the last argument. Can we do it? Yunji asked Tejo quietly. He thought about those moments during the Earth battle, the feeling of unity, the sense of becoming something greater than himself. It had felt right, like humanity was always meant to be this way. Yes, he said with certainty. We can. The last argument. Tejo stood on his bridge and looked at the view screen. Outside, 3,847 predecessor ships floated in perfect formation around the sun. Every ship glowed with soft blue light. Every human pilot was ready and waiting. He could feel them in his mind, already thousands of nervous thoughts, thousands of beating hearts, all connected to the preliminary neural link that Keeper had established. Are you afraid? Keeper asked softly. Terrified, Tejo admitted. His hands gripped the edge of the console. What if we fail? Then you fail as the predecessors did, fighting for something greater than yourselves. There's no shame in that. Through the long-range sensors, Tejo watched the swarm approach. They came from the dark, between stars like a plague. Billions of biomechanical horrors, each one hungry, each one evolving. The sensors could barely count them all. The numbers kept climbing higher and higher until they became meaningless. This was extinction coming, the end of everything. All pilots. Tejo transmitted across every channel. This is it. Remember why we are here. Remember what we are protecting. Remember who we are. Humans, Doyen said quietly from his ship. Survivors, Minjae added, her voice stronger than Tejo had ever heard it. Inheritors, Yunji finished. Tejo closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Keeper, initiate the merge. The ships began to move. They flowed toward each other like drops of water running together. Metal touched metal. The predecessor technology activated, restructuring itself at levels human science could not even measure. The ships were merging physically, becoming something new. But the real merge was happening inside Tejo's mind. He felt the first pilot connect, then another, then 10, then 100. Their thoughts touched as like waves lapping at a shore. Fear, hope, determination, love, all of it flooding into him. He felt a cargo pilot from Mars who grew tomatoes in his spare time. The smell of dirt and green things filled Teo's senses even though he was in space. He felt a soldier from Titan who missed her daughter. The memory of a little girl's laugh echoed in his ears. He felt a teenager from Earth who had always dreamed of flying among the stars. The pure joy of that dream washed over him. Thousands of lives, thousands of stories, thousands of souls all flowing together like rivers joining into an ocean. The physical ships merged too. They restructured and reformed, quantum bonds breaking and rebuilding in new configurations. The result was something that could barely be called a ship anymore. It was an entity, a living weapon the size of a small moon that crackled with power that made stars look dim. But the real power was not in the metal or the energy. It was in the minds. 3,847 human consciousnesses perfectly synchronized, thinking as one, acting as one. Teho, who was also everyone, looked at the approaching swarm with thousands of eyes. Now, they said with one voice that spoke in perfect harmony. The last argument moved. The battle could not be described in simple terms. It happened across multiple dimensions at once. The swarm attacked with weapons that bent reality itself. They used viral code that tried to corrupt the ship's systems. They sent biological horrors that defied all natural laws. The last argument adapted faster than the swarm could imagine, because humans did not just react. They created. They improvised. A mining technique became a devastating attack pattern. A children's game suggested a defensive formation. A musician's sense of rhythm-coordinated weapons fire in ways no computer could calculate. The swarm learned. The swarm evolved. Humanity learned faster. Hours became days. The battle raged across the entire solar system. The swarm pushed closer and closer to Earth, determined to consume humanity's birthplace. Teho and everyone felt the strain. Holding thousands of minds together was like trying to hold back an avalanche with bare hands. Some pilots began to slip away, their consciousness fragmenting under the pressure. Stay together. Teho and everyone called out, "Remember why we fight." And then something happened that the swarm could not understand, could not adapt to, could not defeat. Every human pilot remembered. They remembered home. They remembered family. The first sunrise they had ever seen. A lover's smile. A parent's hug. A friend's joke. A child's wonder. All the small, beautiful, human moments that made life worth living. The swarm consumed matter and energy. Humans consumed meaning and purpose. The swarm adapted to survive. Humans adapted to thrive. The swarm was unity through force and domination. Humanity was unity through choice and love. The last argument blazed with light that was not quite physical. It struck at the swarm's core intelligence, the central processor that coordinated billions of units across light years. And it whispered one simple truth that shattered everything the swarm was built on. We choose to be. The swarm broke, not destroyed completely, not killed, but driven back, scattered, its central mind fractured into a million confused pieces. It retreated beyond the edge of the galaxy, broken and defeated. It would return someday, perhaps in centuries or millennia. But the galaxy would be ready. The merge ended slowly. The last argument separated back into individual ships. Each pilot returned to their own consciousness, their own body, their own thoughts. The sensation was like waking from the most vivid dream ever experienced. Teho found himself on his bridge, gasping for air. Tears streamed down his face. He had been part of something greater than himself. He had touched thousands of souls and found every single one of them beautiful. "We did it," Keeper said softly. "You succeeded where the predecessors failed." Messages flooded in from everywhere. The coalition formally recognized humanity's right to keep the predecessor ships. Multiple alien species requested alliances and treaties. Earth celebrated across every colony, every station, every settlement scattered among the stars. Humanity had saved the galaxy. What now? Minjae asked over the communication channel. Her voice sounded exhausted but happy. Now! Teho stood up and looked at Earth through his view screen. The blue and green planet hung in space like a jewel. Now we do what the predecessors wanted. We protect. We defend. We become the shield this galaxy needs. We should put one ship in a museum, Dorian suggested. The first one. The one that started everything. Tejo smiled. Good idea. We will put on display with a simple sign that says, the cheapest investment in history, 50 cents. Years later, a small auction was held on a distant world. Among the items was a strange device, partially buried in junk, overlooked by everyone. A young alien child picked it up. It cost almost nothing, just pocket change. The device hummed softly. It whispered in the child's language. Welcome, heir. We have been waiting. The predecessors had seeded more than just humans. They had planted hope itself across the stars. And humanity stood ready to welcome the next inheritors. They had learned the most important lesson. The price of inheritance was not measured in money. It was measured in courage.